Salut, welcome to my channel. I'm Akshara and I recently cleared my TEF Canada exam, which is the Test d'Evaluation de Française, and obtained the French proficiency scores for my immigration application to Canada. I've created this channel to talk everything about the French language and the TEF Canada exam. The reason that I came up with this channel was because a lot of people started reaching out to me with the same kind of questions that I had when I first started out or kept having throughout my journey. So here's my bit to help you along yours. I'll be sharing my 13-month long roller coaster journey along with certain tricks and resources which helped me get the required NCLC score. So if you think this would be helpful, do make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss any of my new videos. Alright, so let's get started with this video. Okay, let me start from the very beginning. Basically, it all started when I decided to make a permanent residency application to Canada in the month of November 2022, and I started looking out for ways to increase my CRS points. I've completed my bachelor's, and the obvious choice was to, pick a master's course in Canada and move there. When I started researching, I realized I wasn't too keen on doing any random course for, just the sake of moving. I always knew that the French language route existed, but I never considered it much. But this time around, I gave it some thought and I felt like maybe I could give it a shot. For people who don't have a clear idea of the CRS score and the entire structure along with the French proficiency route, I'll be linking another video regarding the same, explaining everything in detail. So, anyways, getting back, I felt like I would rather learn French and pick it up as a skill for life instead of, doing a master's program. Initially, I got super excited that I would be able to learn French and, watch French movies and immerse myself in the French culture because why not? It indeed is one of the most beautiful and romantic languages in the world, right? So I started watching all these YouTube videos regarding TEF. Unfortunately, I think there wasn't much videos or resources available at that moment when I started out. But I scoured through every single video that existed on the internet. And after talking to some language schools that I found off internet, I was sort of convinced that if I put my heart and soul into it, I can probably like clear TEF in 8 months. Well, in hindsight, I only can realize how wrong I was. The entire thought process was super glitchy. Anyways, after some intense research for like a month, I finally found a language school in Bangalore. They are located in Bangalore, but I took online classes from them. The reason that I like this particular institution was because they had all native French speakers. And, it's very important. I only realized this impact much later on when I started listening to French language and people conversing in the language. I started A1 coaching in the last week of December 2022 and I sort of completed it in like a month, I guess. Also, another thing is, I must mention that I had no French knowledge before, aside from the fact that I had done my grade 9 and 10 second language in French. I have no idea in the world as to how I had passed my board exam because I legitimately didn't learn a single thing in those 2 years. Anyways, here A1 felt alright for me because I started doing Duolingo ever since I decided to learn French. I started looking at it in November 2022 and then I had a good 1 month's time wherein I started sort of listening to something in French. I started doing these Duolingo exercises, learning, small words like le chocolat, les pommes, things like that. So during my research phase, I started trying to understand, okay, do I even really like and enjoy learning the process, learning the language, the entire process of learning, right? Here, a tip would be that, before you get started, I honestly recommend everyone to evaluate if you even like or enjoy this. I do want to mention that I personally like learning new languages, and I keep trying to pick up phrases from different languages. And I think that this factor is extremely important. Put yourself in uncomfortable experiences, like maybe watch a French movie or do some exercises online. It will really show you if you have the patience, or at the very least, if it is even interesting or exciting for you. Because when things get really hard eventually, and it definitely will. Sometimes the only fact is that the fact that you will be able to learn and speak this language can keep you going. Or even just better yet, talk to someone personally who has already done this exam, who has taken up either TEF or TCF Canada, and ask them how their language learning process was like. This will definitely give you an idea, because deciding to take up these exams is a huge deal, and I think that it takes a certain kind of real mental strength to get through. I personally met so many people along my journey who absolutely detested French after a while. I definitely don't intend to discourage anyone. Rather, I would like to paint the real, honest picture, so this would help you make an accurate decision for your own self. Because, irrespective of how hard these 13 months were, I'm super glad that I took this decision. Apart from learning the language itself, I learned so many things about my own self. The patience I had to develop was like insane. Anyways, yeah, where were we? So basically, I finished my A1, and then I did my A2 grammar, B1, and then B2 grammar, consecutively for the next 4 months. It was extremely hard. I was taking these classes for about 4 hours a day for 5 days a week. 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. It was really infuriating, to say the least, but I kept going, thinking I'm very close to taking the exam, because that's what I told myself, that I could clear this exam in 8 months. It was one hard target, but I think I was super motivated, as it was quite challenging for me. Even the entire learning process was a real challenge in itself, right from A1, right? I pretty much finished the typical B2 course by May. I think I took about 10 days of gap in total for during those 4 months, because I felt like my brain was being burnt out some days. At the back of my head, I kept feeling like if I don't think about French every 1 hour, I might completely forget the language. While that is extreme, I did understand eventually that keeping the language going in one or the other way is super helpful. For example, it's been about 2 months that I cleared the exam, but even as we speak, I feel like I don't know anything in French, because it's a language that you don't typically use every single day, so you don't know how far you have come, or how much of the language you know. So you constantly keep having those fears. Yeah. So up until this point, I had only learned the grammar. We did the grammar from the Saison series of books. It's a good resource to start with. However, one mistake I did during these 4 months was that I didn't do any learning on my own, apart from these 4 hour classes every day. 4 hour classes every day was in itself pretty challenging, because he used to give me all these exercises to deal with, and I had to do these homeworks and then go back to the class and discuss with him. And more often than not, you only get wrong answers while you're learning, at least. So it was pretty challenging, and I felt tired. My brain was exhausted after these 4 hours of classes, so I did not have much motivation to go back and do some learning on my own. He used to give me a lot of homework, but the thing was, I only kept focusing on grammar, and which is what most of the people do initially when you start learning a new language, because it is very important. I mean, of course, grammar is pretty much the foundation of any language, and it is extremely important, but I also think that learning vocabulary is super important as well. In hindsight, I should have focused a little on listening some basic audios on my own as well. I will recommend you to spend a few hours trying to watch some basic French series in order to immerse yourself right from the very beginning. That will definitely help you get accustomed to the intonation and their pronunciation. So yeah, one strong recommendation that I have for A1 and A2 learners is to watch Extra French. It's a very funny and engaging series which is super popular among the beginners. I think it's also available in various different languages. I will link it in the description below. And to strengthen your basic grammar skills, I would suggest you to watch French with Alexa. She's the absolute best YouTuber out there for beginners to brush up on your grammar skills. Aside from my general course, I watch people talk about this course on Udemy called the 3 Minutes French by Kiran Ball. It's for beginners. I went out and I was impulsive and bought a bunch of videos from that series, but to be very honest, I didn't find it very helpful. As a matter of fact, I didn't watch it beyond few minutes as I felt it a bit repetitive. And also, the other thing is that I really believe that a lot of content is already available out there on the internet for free. Just some little research is needed. Don't impulse buy courses, at least at the very beginning. Initially, all kinds of content is available on the internet. You can just type up anything and start watching videos. Eventually, when you realize that you need help with certain particular skill, then you should go out and start investing in either courses or on platforms where you can meet teachers. The next thing was, in my initial months of learning, I totally focused deeply on the pronunciations and accents. My instructor was a native French speaker and he constantly kept correcting my pronunciations. I do believe that it is very easy to learn correctly from the beginning rather than changing it later on. There were words which I learned initially appropriate pronunciations, and that yielded me very well. On the other hand, there were words that I learned wrong, and I had a very hard time correcting it eventually. Like, I had to put a lot more effort to correct the ones that I was using wrong. So, yeah, that's always there, that you always invest time into learning appropriate and right things, and that will definitely help you along the way. It's a lot harder to change eventually because your mind sort of gets accustomed to that particular way, and then it feels hard. So I used to shadow his way of pronunciations and intonations. Initially it did feel funny because French is a lot of sort of it, you need to put a lot of pressure on the way you pronounce words, and it feels like you're faking it. But in reality, that's how the French people talk, and it is okay to keep doing that until you actually start picking it up and it becomes natural for you as well. So, it helped me a lot with my expressio oral. I think expressio oral was one of my strongest actions later on because I started putting a lot more effort right from the very beginning to pronounce words properly and listen to the words clearly when either in videos or when my instructor was saying out words, so that my brain sort of uh, tried to map a picture of how it is pronounced, and then I kept repeating it constantly in my head as well as pronouncing it accurately as well. Another aspect is paying attention to the accent as well. When you start observing right from the beginning, it all becomes very normal. It's sort of memorization. You start understanding the real uses of accent, like accent grave. It helps you with your pronunciation as well as your writing material, which is very very important. And I feel like this is where the role of an instructor comes in. This is where real feedback comes into picture, which sort of takes me to my next point, which is I would like to address that a lot of people ask me if I can study French from scratch by myself and give the exam. It is definitely possible. There's a ton of resources available on the internet for free, and yes, people do choose to do that as well. But in my understanding, while I think it is possible, learning a new language with direction is extremely important. You could go on and on watching videos on YouTube and do some grammar points which are out there on the internet, but without real time feedback from someone human, it's super hard to understand and estimate where you stand or how far you've come. Like I said, sometimes I don't understand if I really know the French language in itself. Now I do have a certificate that says I have got these scores, but without actually somebody giving you feedback and telling you, okay, this is something you know and this is something you don't know, it's very hard to understand where you stand, or how far you've come. So I would divide this entire journey into two parts. One is learning the language in itself, and the second half is the preparation for the TEF examination. From my experience, I would recommend signing up with some learning school, language school for the first half, which is learning the grammar until B2, because that is pretty much the foundational step for everything. And during these months, my focus was solely on the language. I never looked into TEF pattern or anything that distracted me, because learning in itself was intimidating enough for me back then. While that is okay for, like, first 3 to 4 months until you ease into the language, I do believe that it is necessary for you to look into the pattern and sort of understand what exactly is coming for you. That was an interesting twist in my learning journey, and I will talk more about it in detail in the part 2 of this video series. So, subscribe, that way you can watch the part 2 as soon as it's posted. And that's it for now. I'll see you in the part 2. Abhiyanto.